Data Officer. Please welcome Alysia.
I think they're on. Yep, they're live.
It's a very high chair for me.
Yes, I know. we don't get kudos from women who are up here on stage, and I appreciate that. First, tell us about, or a couple of things. It's such a vast company now with so many different titles. I know that we're not going to cover all of it. But first of all, tell us about the premier properties that Dotdash Meredith represents and what your new role at the company is.
Sure. So we are fortunate in the combined Dotdash Meredith to have 40 plus premium brands. I think you will recognize People, All Recipes, Better Homes and Gardens from the Legacy Meredith side, but from the Dotdash side, we have brands like Investopedia and Birdie, which is a Gen Z beauty brand, to The Spruce, which is a powerhouse in home-related commerce, for example. So a wide spectrum covering categories from health, finance, food, home, beauty, travel, tech, and entertainment. So a broad swath of categories and brands.
So when you put these two together, let's talk about the impact on the revenue and on the business strategy and how the revenue breaks down. Bring us through the main categories of revenue now of these two companies merged together and how the merger has sort of changed that mix.
Sure. So, I think that the merger has really helped us to continue to diversify revenue, which is something that all of us, I know, are very focused on. And it's also positioned us in particular with Dotdash and Meredith coming together because in a lot of ways, our revenue streams were very complementary. So the core revenue streams for the company are advertising, commerce, licensing, and consumer subscriptions.
In that order? In that order,
well,
roughly?
Probably generally, but I don't want to.
Licensing is really big for Meredith because Meredith was,
is.
I believe, the second largest licensor in the world. Right?
We absolutely are. So licensing, we're the second largest licensor next to Disney. And I think at the new combined company, that's going to continue to grow even more going forward. So that's really important. Advertising, though, continues to be a stronghold because don't forget we have digital advertising and we have our magazine advertising. So still really core to the business. And the nice thing is that between Dotdash and Meredith, we actually didn't have a lot of overlap from a client perspective. So it really was, a 1 + 1 equals, more than 2 from that perspective. And again, the breadth of categories was also very complementary for us as well. Commerce, I would say, is one of the biggest opportunities for growth. So advertising is still core, will continue to be core. Commerce, though, significant growth opportunity there. Actually, one of the main reasons why Dotdash bought Meredith was the commerce opportunity. Mm-hmm. And again, a real opportunity because Meredith focused on commerce related to news and deals, right? So you think about People doing an article that says, Jennifer, here are the shoes that Jennifer Aniston wore, and here are some deals for you to get those shoes, right? That's what we focused on from a commerce perspective. Dotdash focused on really developing those robust, rich, deep product reviews. And so the opportunity to apply that type of commerce to the legacy Meredith brands is a real opportunity. Then you mentioned licensing, which, again, especially through the BHG Walmart partnership, which we are looking to expand and grow and expand for other brands as well. And then consumer subscriptions are still going to be core for us for our magazine business. We're focused on high quality subscribers, but that's going to continue to be core as well. I think what you won't see us do is we are not putting up paywalls or reg walls against our content. like some others in the industry are, because we do believe the opportunity is bigger for us to grow through advertising and commerce. So those are the main revenue streams. Obviously, we have others. We were just talking about podcasting and other areas that we are monetizing, but those are the core main revenue streams.
And you see e-commerce as the greatest source of growth?
I think,
is it already the biggest growth?
I think
source
it
of
has
growth?
the biggest potential for growth across the board, and we're already starting to see that.
So you said that Dotdash and Meredith are actually doing two different styles of e-commerce. So then how does that come together? Are they inform each other? Do you merge them into a sort of a unified way of doing e-commerce?
Well,
or is it just scale?
It's just continuing to do more. So it's actually, we can apply the news and deals to legacy Dotdash brands. I think the product review opportunity to apply to legacy Meredith brands is an even bigger opportunity. So we're going to continue to push on both fronts and learn. They're just different experiences. One is very news driven, right? And the other is very evergreen driven. And so it's not either or. We continue to push both of those.
So you've been involved in mergers before. And you were in most notably the Meredith Time magazines.
Yes.
Was it Time Inc. or Time magazines?
Time Inc.
Time Inc.
Yeah.
That merged. What did you learn from that merger that you applied to this one?
Well, here's what I would say. I think they're very different, and I think that's a lesson learned. I've been in mergers prior to my role here as well. So when Time Inc. and Meredith came together, it was about bringing two very similar traditional publishing companies together, and the goal was to find synergies and efficiencies to then be able to move the business forward. And the investment philosophy, being especially for Meredith, being a dividend-driven public company, your investment philosophy is very different than this experience, which is bringing Dotdash and Meredith together under IAC's leadership. And actually, the companies are very complementary, actually, in this situation. And the goal is really about focusing on long-term growth, right? We are about building a digital-first publisher for decades to come. And so the philosophy and the approach on this one was very different than the other ones. Dotdash brings this more agile startup, digital native expertise and culture to the forefront, and Meredith brings incredible brands and sales and sort of more diversity and experience in other areas as well. So it's hard to say. They were just very, very different. And in this one, again, it was more complementary than in the first one. And there's just more of a longer term focus as we think about where to grow. So the goal in bringing Dotdash and Meredith together was like, what's not working that we should stop doing versus what should we be doubling down and growing, right? And making those decisions fast. And moving forward is what there's.
I want to get to those things,
yes,
those specific things in a second. But I want to stick with the idea for a while, unpack the notion of growth and this vision of a digital-first publisher that will last into the future. And what does that actually mean? What is that? How is that different from what Meredith was already doing and what Dotdash was already doing?
So I think that, first of all, we're bringing these organizations together. We're fortunate. We are the largest publisher. We are reaching, almost 200 million consumers each month digitally alone. And so scale is important, number one. Brands are critical, I think, for the long term, and that is something that Dotdash Meredith is absolutely reinforcing, putting our brands at the forefront. But the mission is simple, right? Is that our goal is to create the highest quality, intent-driven content to answer our consumers' questions and help drive them from inspiration to action. Yes, I know that's the pitch, but I think it's important because it's part of the core fundamentals of if you continue to do that going forward, you can win. If you put the brands and the consumers first and you help to answer those questions and you are rigorous in creating that content and applying editorial excellence with your brands and invest. I know we're going to talk about where we're investing, that we really do believe the path forward is really, really bright, right? And it doesn't mean that we're only digital. It just means that we are a digital first, and we're going to put our brands and our experiences on the platforms that make the most sense, and we're going to invest in those areas that we see.
What have you been learning from one another so far? What do you know from Dotdash that maybe you didn't know or didn't fully appreciate before? And what do you think Dotdash is learning from you?
So I think that what I was talking about earlier was this, they've got this incredible discipline and rigor that they apply to their content creation and their focus on editorial excellence, in particular related to how they drive organic traffic. So Google's the best proxy for intent from a consumer, right? They have a need, they come to you, you help them answer that need. And they are experts in this capability and this function. And those are the signals that you really need to understand in order to understand what your consumers are looking for. And so, again, that expertise, but again, this focus on investing in content, investing in the brands, investing in commerce, like they really bring that to the forefront of everything that we do, in addition to sort of the culture that we talked about earlier. I think on the Meredith side, like I said, we've got these incredible brands and strong relationships with sales, with our advertising partners that we've had for many years, strong partnerships that we've had in place. We bring a rigor around data, but they do too, absolutely. And then again, the diversity, just, I was talking to somebody earlier, we're pretty good at email, and the recognition of being able to reach and engage users, high quality users through email and social and Discover and Apple News and all of those other places that you need to reach and engage consumers. That's expertise that we've brought to the table as well.
Let me start a little bit of an internal argument between Dotdash and Meredith. And as you describe Dotdash, it sounds to me that maybe what they're telling you is the brand doesn't matter as much as you think it does. That as you talked about, they know search engines. They know that people are coming in with an intent, and they want an answer. They don't really want a brand. So talk me down from the idea that we are really in an age where we're starting to see that brands don't matter nearly as much as those legacy media companies always wanted them to.
So actually, I think it's absolutely the opposite. I would say that our brands and our consumers are at the forefront now more than they've ever been in this combined organization. And one of the power of the acquisition for them was getting access to these incredible, incredible brands. So no matter what channel or medium you are in, if you have a premium, recognized brand, you're going to win, whether that's in search or on social or podcast, whatever the case might be. The brand has the power to extend across platforms, right? So making sure that we are continuing to invest in the brands and transforming and elevating the brands is absolutely, absolutely critical. So I even in the search example, the top brands are going to pop to the front. A consumer still will choose a premium brand that they trust over a brand that they don't know in that specific circumstance. So I think the opposite is true. We really, truly are putting the brands and the consumers first, and I'm happy to share how we've invested in these different areas more so now than we ever have before.
But it's not brands that any longer are necessarily attracting people and pulling in people to their authority directly so much as the brand has to be there to answer the question at the right time and then use the brand authority behind it to say our answer is better than the other guy's answer.
But I want to be clear that that engaging our consumers through organic is important, but that's not the only way we engage our consumers. So we actually are very fortunate that we engage our consumers through a variety of different channels. So we still drive a significant amount of engagement and traffic on social channels, through Google Discover, through Apple News, through email, right? So what we're doing though is we're applying that lens of intent and making sure that when we're creating content for social or for Discover, that we have that lens in mind. But it's not just one single source or single channel that we are focused on. What we're saying is intent is what we really need to make sure we understand, and then we apply that at every touch point with the consumer. So in the circumstances of, if you think about Discover or Apple News or social, the brands matter immensely, right? And that absolutely is a pull.
So this is a growth play, it's a
Growth.
scale play. Who's the main competition? Who are you scaling against?
Well, I think that if we think about the future, I think we obviously compete with other publishers, but I think for us, our focus is really on the platforms. And the platforms, as we all know, they're both our partners and our competitors. But I think that when we compare ourselves and we look at how we're doing and how we're performing and how we stack up, that's who we're really looking at from a competitive perspective. Yeah.
So let's talk about the place where you've seen investments and the place
Yeah.
where you've had to make some
Yeah.
hard decisions
Yep.
about what not to invest in.
Yes.
I want to start there.
Okay.
Because one of the things that you guys have done is you've jettisoned some major brands.
Yes.
Tell me about the ones that you jettisoned and the reasons you made those decisions, and then let's talk about where you decided to double down.
Right, so let me be clear, we didn't jettison the brands, we just stopped doing printed magazines for some of these brands, but that's important,
Well,
right?
some you sold off. Didn't you sell some off? Or not? No, you simply came out of
That was
print.
Time
All right,
Meredith.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
All
did
right,
that at
all
Time
right.
Meredith, we sold off. So I think there are two things that I would say we have divested from. One is certain magazines, the other is certain types of advertising, so we can get to that too. On the magazine side, we divested from a certain set of magazines. So we still have the digital experiences, but we stopped printing the magazine. Brands like Entertainment Weekly and In Style and some others as well. But I think that the net there is that the business model just didn't make sense, in that the business model was too skewed to advertising and not consumer. And quite frankly, we needed to look at what was making money and what was doing well and what wasn't. And we are focused on going forward are those brands that have a more balanced business model. If a consumer's willing to pay for your magazine, then that's the sign that you're looking for to continue. And we've invested in the magazines that we continue to run and will continue to do so. So, but it's really the business model.
Well, give me an example. And does that mean that, so I guess People would be a good example?
People's a good example.
That's not only an example of that people are, by maintaining a subscription to People, they're showing a high degree of loyalty.
Yes.
Not only to the print, but you're saying that ports over into digital.
It can,
So
right?
that sort of becomes a super brand for you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So that is absolutely how we evaluate all of this, right? They're intertwined, right? The power of People, the power of Better Homes and Gardens, the power of Travel and Leisure. There's a strong legacy in the printed magazine, and that will continue. And if consumers are willing to pay, doesn't necessarily mean, though, that we have the same consumers on the magazine side as on the digital side, right? I think that, but the models have to be, on the magazine side, they have to be more consumer driven. Someone's got to actively want to pay a premium for that experience.
Okay. Let's talk about where you're making investments on other channels. Are
Yeah.
there particular channels that you're heavying up on that you think are really the areas for growth for you, and we're really going to see development?
So I think there's a few examples here. So I said earlier that we're investing in content, and I know that sounds trivial being a publisher, but we're investing more in our content than we did at Legacy Meredith. So that, they put their money where their mouth is, and that editorial excellence and really focusing on that intent-driven content is core. So, we're spending more money, we're creating, review boards, anti-bias review boards, quality reviews, updating like incredible evergreen content. So strong investment in content. The second is investment in our brands and our experiences. So I do want to come back to this. So on the digital side, we're migrating our Legacy Meredith brands over to the Dotdash stack, which is much more agile and faster. And what we're seeing is when we focus on the consumer experience, showcasing our content more, we're seeing more engagement and more revenue. So here's an example for you. Health.com was migrated over. It was 5 times faster. We took 30% of the ads off the page. We're seeing more consumer engagement and better advertising performance and more revenue than we did previously, right? And we're going to be able to do even more of that now that we're on this new platform that's going to allow our brands to really shine even more.
More revenue because you're charging higher CPMs on the fewer ads that are on there, and you're able to make that case with advertisers. They're performing better.
Yep,
on what basis? On a performance basis or on a brand lift basis?
Both.
Preach to the preach to the choir here, because in terms of experience, the internet has been one of the worst media experiences ever invented by man.
Yes.
And we have the opportunity now to actually change it and because I talked to Neil about this, Neil Vogel, about this the last time we had him here. And this was this idea that less is more on the page.
Yep.
So let's dig into that and how you're proving that to advertisers, because I hope everybody does this.
Yes, no, absolutely. And we're still in the midst, like we've transitioned about 95% of our brands and traffic over to these new platforms. It doesn't happen overnight, but we've seen these results. So viewability is up, click-through rates up, CPMs are up. And so, I mean, that's the
well, what does that look like? How many ads per page? So how are you gating this, and how do you judge what's a reasonable page, ad load on a page now?
Well, it just here's what I will say. This is where it does vary by brand, right? Mm-hmm. By content type. And so it's not a one size fits all. I think what you need to do is like go back to basics, right? Look at the consumer experience. One of the things that we did, which I was very excited about, was we first just stopped any pop-ups or interstitials or any really highly intrusive ads. So just by doing that, the experience was dramatically changed. So that was first and foremost. And then after that, it's about optimizing. Look, we are in an advertising business. Ads need to be a part of the experience that we present, but we want to make sure they're as relevant as they can be. We all know that. But I think that was really key for us as we looked through that. And then from there, now we're optimizing for performance, and our advertising partners are seeing that, right? So viewability is up, performance is up, relevancy is up when we talk about, targeting and intent targeting. So that's how we're absolutely proving it, and I think we still have more to prove. But we're in the midst of that right now. I would say.
I want to cover a bunch of things very quickly here. I do want to talk about about your testing lab and your e-commerce and all of that, because that's a critical piece here. You're investing. Well, you've always invested. I think Meredith has always invested in its testing lab, but. Tell us about the ways in which that investment, you expect that to pay off, and especially in relation to the e-commerce piece.
Yeah, and before I get to the commerce piece, just on the branding piece, we are investing in our magazines. We are investing in our brands. We just, did the Better Homes and Gardens 100-year anniversary event, which we took to a whole other level. We had Harry Styles on the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. So I just want to go back to the point of like investing in brands and continuing to evolve and elevate them is really core for us and will continue to be core. Okay, commerce. Again, like I said earlier, this is probably one of the big reasons why Dotdash bought Meredith, was to apply the expertise and rigor that they have around these deep, rich product reviews to the Legacy Meredith brands. So it is absolutely a huge area of investment for us right now, and we're already seeing the benefits and the content that we're creating in this space. So, we have a team of over 250 focused on this, and we have, while we had test kitchens before, we didn't have product testing or product methodology to implement this. So in Des Moines, we have like 72,000 square feet. I think that's the right number. But we've got test kitchens, product studios, a test garden. We have Birmingham set up for food. We have studios set up in New York for beauty and travel and entertainment. So we've got a ton of focus on developing these robust product reviews. And not just in studio, but real world testing. So like when our travel editors go to Dubai to check out the opening of a new resort, or, they're testing, travel luggage on the way there. And I think the philosophy is simple. We treat commerce and these product reviews like content. It's editorial, right? We don't do anything the brand doesn't want to do. We are all about serving the consumer. The editors are in charge. As we all know, anyone in this space, you've got to be authentic, right? This is not about tacking on a monetization commerce widget to your business, right? It's got to be core to the brands, core to what you do, authentic in order to drive it forward. So that's what we're starting to implement, and I think the potential for this in particular is really big.
And this is where also scale comes in, because I'm guessing you should be able to cut much more lucrative relationships with some of the major e-commerce players because of this scale and your brand. So the revenue side goes up. We are not just talking about affiliate links.
Yes.
You've already got a pre-existing relationship with Walmart,
yes.
right?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Right.
We have
So
quite
who are the major e-commerce players? Do you limit the number of e-commerce players that you partner with, or are there major ones that you're, other than Walmart, that you're
No, we have big
embedded
ones.
with?
I mean,
Just
Amazon
about.
is a
Okay.
massive partner. And again, I think Meredith and Dotdash had these really big partnerships with all of the big retailers that you all would know. And so that, again, that gets to be 1 + 1 because we weren't even playing necessarily, again, in the same space. So it really is an opportunity to grow.
So I want to wrap here, but I want to focus on this idea of intent and audience, because it's a term that keeps on coming up, and I really want to drill into what that actually means in practice. But we want to get your questions as well, so please think about some questions, and we'll get a mic to you in a minute. So the term intent keeps coming up, and in our earlier conversations, we talked about sort of migrating from this notion of focusing only on audience targeting and audience segmentation to this notion of intent targeting and targeting moments as well.
Yep.
Tell us what that actually means in practice.
Sure.
How does that look?
So,
what are you targeting there, and give us some examples of what that means.
So I think when we think about audience targeting, right, audience targeting way back in the day was really like tied to demographics. We still do too much demographic targeting, by the way. But anyway, let's hope we're all getting past that. But building an audience is against demos, interests, behaviors. But a lot of it tends to be focused on what you have done in the past and not necessarily what's happening in the moment. And so when we think about focusing on intent, I think for all publishers, right, you want to understand what your consumers are coming to you for in that moment of need, right? What are they coming to you for? I think as a marketer, they would all say, if you can reach the consumer when they are looking to figure out what paint to use on their kid's bedroom, at that time when they're looking for it, that the performance, especially towards the bottom of the funnel, conversion and performance is best, right? Reaching that consumer at that moment is ideal. Like I said, our content strategy overall across every platform is to make sure that we use all of our first-party data and insights, bringing together Meredith's and Dotdash to really understand our consumers as deeply as we possibly can, so we can learn more about that intent. So, let's say we have, Google is the best proxy for intent. Ton of expertise, deep expertise on why and when and how consumers are coming to us. That's core. But again, we have insights and signals across multiple different data sets that we can leverage. But someone's coming to us looking for houseplants. We need to look at, okay, when consumers come to us, what questions are they asking? Are they trying to answer? when they come to us. We've got a ton of data on all of that. Which audiences? We're still looking at what audiences are engaging with that content. What do we know about them, including their demographics, including their interests? Are there certain times of day, days of week, right? So we're using all of this information in order to then be able to try to focus on that real-time intent targeting. And we can do that, fortunately for us, at scale now in a way that I don't think we could even before.
And other than Google, how and where are you going to intercept that intent?
Well, we're still using all of our other sources. So we are still looking at when consumers come to us from email, what are they coming to us from? Discover is a big source for us as well. Social is as well. We all know socials, depending on the platform you're talking about, up and down. So we're actually applying a lot of rigor to TikTok, right? We know that the younger generation's using TikTok for search now more, in some cases and more so than Google. So understanding that audience, we're applying the same sort of analytics and methodology that we would, taking our lessons from that
TikTok
core.
not just as a publishing platform, but actually as an intent signal.
Absolutely.
Let's see if we have any questions. Here we go.
Fabrizio from Axios. Thanks for the presentation. Question, for a publisher that is looking at ways to introduce commerce revenue lines into the platform, what advice would you give to them?
Commerce in general?
Fabrizio, do you have any commerce? No, this is Axios.
Okay. So, it's interesting. And when we talk about commerce, it's such a broad, people are like, what does that mean? There's affiliate, there's performance marketing, there's, for us too, we have what I would call shopper, which is CPM driven, right? Through advertising partners, click to cart, shoppable ads, et cetera. So when we think about commerce, there's a lot on the spectrum of what commerce can be. I think that, again, the philosophy we use, I know this sounds really basic, but you've got to start with your consumer and your brands, right? Where do you have the authority to play from a commerce perspective, and what are your consumers looking for in order to figure out where best to place your bets? And again, I don't think it's just affiliate. I think there are a lot of different opportunities from CPM all the way through to like CPA type models. But I think that's where you have to start. Like, where can you play, and what's most authentic to the brands that you have?
Hi, Charmy from Bustle Digital Group. You mentioned that you guys divested or stopped print for certain magazines, and then you also said something about moving away from certain advertising models. Yeah. Just wanted to get that thought. Yeah.
No, I think what I was focusing on there was what I talked about earlier, which is, we got rid of all of the pop-up ads and the really intrusive ads. So we consciously walked away, right, from certain revenue streams and took a hit in the shorter term with the bet that the longer term revenue and experience was going to be better, right? It's the same philosophy with commerce too. I think if you build the right consumer experience and focus on the brands, and you have the ability, like we do with our owners, to sort of have a longer term view, then walking away from businesses or business models that don't work in order to grow the businesses that do work, that's hard. And that was really hard for a traditional publisher, that it was previously for us, but that we have the opportunity now. And I think that's actually one of the key lessons learned. I think in our space, the ability to, divest what's not working sooner and faster, fail faster, get out, and double down on where you want to go has never been more important, and will continue to be going forward. But you've got to have the ability to walk away from that. Two wrap questions where I get to be a jerk. What has proven harder
than you expected? This is over a year now. What has proven harder than you anticipated about doing this?
Bringing two companies together, like the culture is, bringing two cultures together is, I think in all of I've been in multiple acquisitions, is always the hardest thing. We're bringing together a digital startup with a 100-year-old company, and we're doing it remotely, right? So we are now back in the office a few days a week, but for the most part of this integration, we have been remote. And as we all know, we're here today, building relationships, building trust, that happens much more effectively in a face-to-face environment. So I just say, never underestimate, right? The softer things, the softer components are typically the hardest.
Well, I think those of us who are older than you remember that this was tried once before, AOL and Time Warner. What is different now about not only how you guys are approaching it, but maybe the environment that makes this a different case and the chances for success better?
Well, I just think that, even at Meredith, the growth for the company was focused on digital. So everyone knows where the growth is going to come longer term. So the recognition of that, the recognition and the ability to walk away from things that don't work and try new things, I think that is helping, people, it's inspiring people to take more chances, to look towards the future. It's still hard, it's still a lot of change in a short amount of time. But I do think the vision and the hypothesis of where we will be and the growth story is something that's driving us.
Okay, I got 50 other questions, but Alysia, thank you so much.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.